Imagine you're 19 years old. You are dead broke. You're holding a newborn baby that you are entirely responsible for, and the absolute only lifeline you have left, the only way to pull yourself out of complete financial ruin, is the psychology of professional wrestling.
It sounds completely absurd when you just lay it out like that.
It really does.
Uh,
But you are joining us today for a deep dive that completely flips the script on how we view survival, power, and the stories we tell just to get by. Today, we're immersing ourselves in the source material provided by excerpts from the novel Margo's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe.
and the mission here is to explore the brutal, hilarious, and deeply complex realities of single motherhood, modern poverty, and this incredibly surprising intersection of fake sports and internet sex work.
It's just a wild ride. The hook of this entire story, the thing that makes it so fascinating to read, is how this teenage single mom, who is pushed right to the absolute edge of the cliff, takes the mechanics of a totally scripted fake sport and uses them to become an immensely powerful online creator.
Right, and in doing so, she basically outmaneuvers all the people who tried to control her.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start with our protagonist, Margo, and this incredible illusion of power she's up against. When we first meet Margo, she is 19. She's attending Fullerton Junior College, picking up shifts as a waitress, and she finds herself pregnant. And the father is her mid-30s married English professor, Mark.
Right, and Mark is such a fascinating character study. He's a study in manipulation and intellectualization. To really understand the dynamic between him and Margo, we have to look closely at his philosophy, which he actively shares and enforces in his classroom.
Yeah, he teaches this course on, what was it called? Unlikely points of view.
Impossible or unlikely points of view. And there's this incredibly revealing moment early in the text. A student named Derek tries to analyze a character in a novella by diagnosing her with borderline personality disorder.
And Mark just hates that.
He completely shuts him down. Mark insists that characters are not real people, and that, in his own words, the fakeness is where the interest lies.
The fakeness.
Yes. He tells his students that you aren't trying to have a relationship with the character at all. You are trying to have a relationship with the author through the character. He views the fakeness as a bridge.
Which, I mean, is such a massive red flag when you look at how he operates in his real life. That philosophy bleeds directly into how he treats Margo. He doesn't see her as a fully realized human being with real stakes or real fears. He treats her as a concept.
He treats her as a fantasy for him to play with.
Exactly. He literally tells her, quote, "You are the most singular person I have ever met." And he says this right after interrogating her about a Kermit the Frog tattoo she has on her hip.
He's entirely fetishizing her youth, her lack of seriousness, her whole 19-year-old existence. He is projecting an entire narrative onto her.
And what's wild is how the text uses specific details to paint Mark as this walking cliche of a midlife crisis academic. It is so precise.
Oh, the details are perfect. He wears green corduroys and Birkenstocks.
And he drinks Red Stripe beer, but specifically out of those little medicinal-looking bottles.
Right, and he wears his prescription sunglasses indoors.
The indoor sunglasses. That tells you absolutely everything you need to know about a guy. He's passionate, but in a way that feels totally performative.
And Margo even admits she isn't really attracted to him. She notes that he's short, he's uncircumcised, and he wants to have sex standing up against a wall, which feels like it's just for the cinematic fantasy of it rather than any actual genuine connection.
And then we get to the confessions. This is where his philosophy of fakeness really becomes toxic. He admits to Margo that he slept with his wife's sister on his wedding night.
Which is just, it's staggering.
And his justification for this, he says that if he pretends he didn't do it and his wife doesn't know he did it, it's almost like it never happened.
He literally thinks that if a tree falls in the forest and his wife doesn't hear it, the tree is still standing. It reveals a profound moral compartmentalization.
He views his own actions as completely detached from real-world consequences.
Much like he views the characters in the books he teaches. He's living his life as if he's the author of a fiction where he controls all the fallout. He even writes Margo poetry to solidify this dramatic narrative.
Oh, the poem. Let's talk about the poem.
He writes one called The Hungry Ghost, and it becomes a crucial thematic anchor later on. The poem describes them as deformed doves, and it ends with these incredibly telling lines. "I feel nothing. Keep touching me. I feel nothing. I'm a hungry ghost."
He is projecting his own emotional numbness, his own void, right onto their physical relationship. And Margo basically just goes along with the affair because he has the power. He's the professor, he's older, he's the one driving the car, literally and metaphorically.
But then the pregnancy happens. And this brings us to a major turning point regarding agency in the text.
Right. When Margo discovers she is pregnant, literally everyone in her life tells her to get an abortion. Her mother, Cheyenne, tells her to get one. Mark is completely hysterical and insists she get one.
And the hypocrisy with Mark is staggering. He tries to frame the abortion as being about what Margo wants for her future, completely ignoring the fact that he was the one pulling out instead of using actual protection.
He just wants to hit the undo button on his own carelessness.
Exactly. But the conversation she has with her high school best friend, Becca, is particularly illuminating. Becca is attending NYU. She's living the exact life Margo wishes she had. And Becca explicitly frames the abortion not as a moral issue, but as a financial decision.
Becca tells her point blank, I assure you, money is very real.
And for anyone listening, think about how true that is. The text points out how we love to dress up these massive life choices in the language of morality or destiny, but so often it just comes down to math. Becca is looking at Margo's bank account and doing the math.
The text sets up a stark contrast between Margo's situation and Becca's. Margo doesn't have familial wealth to fall back on.
But here's the critical insight from the source material. Margo's refusal to get an abortion isn't framed as some righteous moral crusade. It's portrayed as a stubborn rebellion against being constantly bent to the will of others.
She realizes that she has spent her entire life being accommodating, letting Mark drive, letting her mother dictate things, letting circumstances just happen to her.
Keeping the baby becomes her first real assertion of agency. She is planting her feet even if she has absolutely no idea how steep the cliff behind her really is.
Which brings us directly to the brutal reality of poverty and new motherhood. The source material does not sugarcoat this transition at all.
No, it doesn't.
Let's talk about the birth of her son, Bodhi. The hospital scene is this masterpiece of grim, dark comedy. Margo's boss at the restaurant, Tessa, bakes her a baby shower cake.
But it's not a cute little stork or pastel blocks.
No, it's a giant hand-carved 3D penis with a pump that squirts white pudding.
It's grotesque, but it's so fitting for the environment Margo is in.
Tessa means well. She loves Margo in this mean, complicated, hardened way. But Margo looks at that cake and feels the profound unfairness of it all. The only love available to her is so inadequate. It's jagged and painful.
And that inadequacy extends right to her own mother. Cheyenne shows up to the hospital 4 hours late.
And why is she late?
Because she was shopping at Bloomingdale's, where she works, to buy a white teddy bear with a constipated face.
And once she finally arrives, she spends the rest of Margo's labor sitting in the corner, playing competitive poker on her phone, chewing gum loudly, and calling the other online players jokers.
Meanwhile, Margo's going through this rabidly thirsty, agonizing labor. She's begging the nurses for ice chips, and all they give her is this yellow lemon-flavored sponge on a stick to suck on.
It is such a visceral, deeply unglamorous depiction of childbirth. It strips away all the glowing maternal mythology and leaves you with sweat, thirst, and a mother playing poker on her phone.
But the physical ordeal of birth is nothing compared to the terror that begins when they actually leave the hospital.
The profound vulnerability Margo feels is palpable. The text describes her panicking in the hospital parking lot because she literally cannot figure out how to release the car seat from the base.
Her new baby is crying, and she describes feeling like she is robbing a bank, that level of adrenaline and panic.
Imagine that feeling. For anyone who has ever brought a newborn home, you know that sheer terror of realizing they're just letting you leave with this fragile human. Now add to that being 19, entirely alone and practically broke.
She has to carry this tiny baby, along with all her bags, up the outside stairs to her rundown apartment, which is tucked behind a gas station called Fuel Up.
She's terrified she's going to trip and drop the baby into the leaf-choked communal swimming pool below.
She finally gets to her room, shuts the door, and just thinks, I am so fucked. She feels the echoey space of no one caring about her, no one coming to help her. She compares it to being on an abandoned space station.
And that profound emotional isolation is immediately followed by a cascading financial disaster. The text meticulously details the systemic trap that Margo falls into. And it's important we break this down because the author is clearly presenting a critique of these systems.
First, she tries to do the responsible thing. She tries to find childcare so she can return to her night shifts as a waitress.
But here's the reality check. Daycares do not cater to night workers.
The hours just don't align. And hiring a private nanny for those hours costs $800 a week.
Which is astronomical for a waitress. She was probably making a fraction of that.
Exactly. So because she can't secure childcare, her boss, Tessa, fires her.
And simultaneously, her roommates move out.
Right. These two girls, referred to as Cat the Larger and Cat the Smaller, they move out with zero notice because they can't handle the reality of a newborn baby crying through the thin walls.
Which leaves Margo and her one remaining roommate, Susie, on the hook for the entire apartment.
And Susie is a LARPer, a live-action role player, who dresses up as an elf and literally sells her blood plasma to buy cat eye contacts.
So they are suddenly staring down a rent bill of $3,995. Let's pause and actually look at the math here. I want you, the listener, to really put yourself in this impossible puzzle. You owe almost $4,000 in rent. You just got fired. You have a newborn.
Margo finally wades through the absolute nightmare of the state unemployment website.
She gets to the final screen. Digital confetti drops, and it tells her the state is going to give her $1,236 a month.
It doesn't even cover half of her portion of the rent, let alone food, diapers, or electricity.
Exactly. Think about your own rent or mortgage right now. Imagine the math of trying to cover that on $1,200 a month. It's not just hard, it's mathematically impossible.
The text is pulling absolutely no punches here. It is highlighting the systemic impossibilities for a single, uneducated mother without familial wealth to simply survive in modern California. The math does not work.
And this desperation is crucial. It sets the stage for everything that happens next. When basic survival is on the line, when eviction is looming over your infant's head, the luxury of the moral high ground evaporates very quickly.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Mark's solution to Margo's desperation is incredibly telling. Does he step up? Does he act like a father?
Of course not.
No, he's still playing out his fantasy where consequences don't exist. So he sends his wealthy mother, Elizabeth, and a guy named Larry the lawyer to deal with the problem. Margo gets called to this sterile law office that looks like a medical center.
She's carrying baby Bodhi in his car seat, and she walks in to face them.
And the transaction that takes place in that conference room is brutal in its cold efficiency.
Elizabeth is sitting there in a raspberry sorbet pink skirt suit. And she clearly views Margo not as a human being, not as the mother of her grandchild, but as a liability to be managed. Line item on a spreadsheet.
The terms of the deal are explicitly laid out. Margo will receive $15,000 in cash immediately.
In addition, a $50,000 mutual fund trust will be established for Bodhi, which will mature to around $300,000 when he turns 18.
But the strings attached are basically a total erasure of Margo's life.
In exchange for this money, Margo must sign a non-disclosure agreement. She must drop out of Fullerton College immediately, effectively ending her education. And she must never, ever contact Mark or his family again.
The most chilling detail of that scene is how Elizabeth keeps referring to Bodhi simply as the child. Even after Margo explicitly tells her his name, it's a complete refusal to humanize them.
And Margo signs the paperwork because, as we just discussed with the math, she literally has no other option. She has a massive rent bill due. She needs food. She needs diapers.
She takes the contracts, puts them in her glove box, and she notes that they feel physically dirty to touch.
She goes straight to the bank to deposit the check. She had never had a bank balance higher than $500 in her life, so $15,000 feels like this unimaginable fortune. She is so paranoid that she's afraid the bank teller is going to accuse her of stealing the check.
Let's talk about the leverage here, though, because Margo doesn't realize what she actually holds.
That is the core of this interaction. The text explicitly notes that this is happening in the Me Too era. A year or two prior, Mark might not have faced severe institutional consequences for sleeping with a 19-year-old student.
But in this current climate, his career, his marriage, his entire reputation could be instantly and permanently destroyed by Margo speaking out.
Yet Elizabeth and Mark view $50,000 as a very small price to pay to neutralize that existential threat.
Right. They assume Margo is just some naive, low-class girl who might cause drama. They don't respect the actual power she holds to ruin him. They just want to buy her silence at a discount.
Margo doesn't realize that she could have asked for twice as much, maybe 5 times as much, and they wouldn't have even blinked.
It's the commodification of silence. This scene establishes money as the ultimate power broker in this universe.
Wealth insulates the powerful from consequence. It dictates who gets to stay in college, who gets to claim parentage, and whose narrative becomes the official, legally binding truth. Mark gets to continue his life unblemished, while Margo's trajectory is completely altered.
But just as Margo is doing the math and realizing how quickly $15,000 is going to vanish in Southern California, an incredibly unlikely savior arrives at her door. Enter Jinx. Margo's estranged father.
He is an ex-professional wrestler who went by the ring named Dr. Jinx.
And Jinx is quite a character. He shows up at her apartment as a recovering opiate addict. He drinks this bizarre medicinal bark tea.
He claims to be recovering from the trauma of his recent divorce and moves into her living room with practically nothing. He brings a sleeping bag, a couple hundred books, and a small ficus tree that he has named Ernest.
Jinx's arrival is the primary catalyst for the entire narrative shift. He brings with him the bizarre, highly theatrical world of professional wrestling.
But before his influence really takes hold, Margo is still in that desperate scramble for a sustainable income. She has the cash from Mark's mother, but she's smart enough to know it's a finite resource that is draining fast.
Wait, but let's be real for a second. Imagine you are Margo. You have a screaming infant, eviction notices looming, and now your estranged, recovering addict father shows up with a fake tree and sleeps on your floor. How is this guy supposed to be her savior? Isn't he just another massive burden on a 19-year-old who is already drowning?
That is exactly what you would assume, and it's exactly what Margo initially fears. He represents chaos. But what Jinx possesses and what Margo desperately needs without realizing it is a masterclass understanding of audience psychology.
But we'll get to how he deploys that in a moment. First, Margo has to find the platform. During a late-night internet spiral, she discovers a wrestler she and Jinx used to watch named Arabella.
Margo finds out that Arabella is making an absolute fortune on OnlyFans.
For anyone listening who might only know OnlyFans from the sensationalized headlines, let's clarify what it is. It's a subscription-based social media platform where creators can lock their content behind a paywall. While it's used by all kinds of creators, it became massively famous as a platform for sex workers to monetize explicit content directly to their fans without a middleman.
And Margo notices something specific about Arabella. Arabella isn't just posting typical explicit photos. She's playing the video game Fortnite while dressed in a hot pink bear suit.
It's niche, it's specific, and it's highly lucrative. Margo has this profound revelation while looking at herself in a cheap dorm mirror after nursing Bodhi. Her breasts are engorged with milk, she's exhausted, and she has this incredibly pragmatic thought. Any man would pay to see this.
She recalls this dark, cynical lesson from her mother, Cheyenne. Cheyenne used to teach her how to contour her mushy nose with makeup, and she told Margo, beauty is like free money.
It's a tragic but deeply utilitarian view of her own body. The world has told her she has no skills, no education, and no prospects. But it has also signaled to her that her physical form has a market value.
So Margo decides to pivot. She creates an OnlyFans account, and the handle she chooses is brilliant. She chooses Hungry Ghost.
She takes the name directly from the pretentious poem Mark wrote her. The one about feeling nothing and being emotionally dead.
It's the perfect reclaiming of the identity he tried to force onto her. He used that phrase to diminish her and excuse his own numbness. She uses it to build an empire.
But here's the problem. She starts posting pictures and nothing really happens. The internet is a crowded place. Just posting a photo isn't enough.
Jinx eventually finds out what she's doing. At first, he is furious. He's this protective father suddenly confronted with his daughter doing sex work. He is morally opposed.
But then necessity kicks in. He realizes they're going to get evicted. If she is going to do this, she needs to understand the psychology of performance.
And this is where the genius of the book's premise really shines. Jinx teaches Margo that OnlyFans, or any internet creator platform for that matter, isn't just about being naked or attractive. It is exactly like pro wrestling psychology.
This blew my mind. The parallels are insane. Break down what Jinx teaches her, because this is a masterclass in marketing.
Let's break it down. Jinx introduces her to the concept of getting over. In wrestling, getting over means getting the audience to actively care about you, to cheer for you, to invest emotionally in your success.
But he also introduces the concept of building heat.
Heat is when the audience loves to hate you. Jinx points out a fundamental truth of human psychology. Hate is just as powerful an engagement metric as love. If they hate you, they will still buy a ticket just to see you get beat up. You have to build a persona. He asks her directly, are you a heel or a face?
And for the non-wrestling fans, the heel is the villain, the bad guy who cheats and taunts the crowd. The face is the babyface hero, the good guy trying to overcome the odds.
Jinx makes Margo realize she can't just be a pair of body parts on a screen. She needs to be a fully realized character in a drama.
He also introduces the necessity of promos and buddies. Promos are the hype, the trash talk, the narrative buildup, the interviews before the actual match that give the physical combat its emotional stakes.
Buddies are the other wrestlers you interact with to create friction and storylines. A face needs a heel, and a heel needs a face. You cannot build a compelling narrative in a vacuum. You need an antagonist.
It completely changes how she approaches the platform. And from a broader perspective, the narrative reframes the concept of sex work entirely here.
It moves it away from this act of desperate, passive exploitation, which is how Mark treated her, into a calculated, highly structured performance art.
Margo isn't just selling access to her body, she's selling a curated, interactive fiction, much like professional wrestling itself. The audience knows it's scripted, but they pay for the emotional ride.
Margo takes this pro wrestling strategy and runs with it, which brings us to her execution phase. She realizes she needs an angle, a specific demographic.
She enlists her LARPing roommate, Susie, to put her through nerd school. Susie has Margo play hours of Minecraft, forces her to watch anime, and gives Margo full access to her extensive cosplay closet.
Margo decides her target audience is nerds people who want a specific, slightly awkward, gamified fantasy.
But she remembers Jinx's lesson. She still needs buddies for cross-promotion. She needs an ecosystem to interact with. So she reaches out to a popular creator named Wang Mangler, also known as Casey.
Margo scrapes together $500 to pay Casey for a promo, hoping Casey will drive her massive audience to Margo's page.
But Casey burns her. Casey forces Margo to lower her subscription price to $4.99 right before doing the promo, meaning the influx of cheap subscribers will never cover the $500 Margo spent. It's a predatory business move.
The stress of this betrayal is so intense that Margo literally throws up in her bathroom. It's her first taste of the cutthroat nature of the creator economy.
But Margo persists. She refuses to be the victim again. She manages to secure an in-person meeting with Casey and Casey's business partner, Rose, whose internet handle is Succulent Rose.
And the description of this meeting is wonderfully surreal. It perfectly captures the bizarre reality behind the glossy screens of internet fame.
Margo walks into their apartment and is immediately confronted with Rose, who has these physics-defying breasts that she casually uses as a forbidden end table to balance her coffee mug while she talks.
Forbidden end table is such a perfect descriptor. And the recording studio is just chaos. It's covered in granola bar wrappers, empty water bottles, and a purple butt plug just sitting out.
It completely shatters the illusion of glamour. And then they serve Margo tea.
Shroom tea. Margo has never done drugs in her life, and she accidentally drinks a full cup of hallucinogenic mushroom tea right before they're supposed to record a podcast together.
Imagine the panic. She is terrified. All she can think about is how she is going to drive home safely and nurse Bodhi.
But she powers through the hallucination. She's sitting there staring at a popcorn ceiling that suddenly looks like falling snow to her altered brain. And while she is tripping on mushrooms, she pitches them her master business strategy.
And the strategy she pitches is genuinely brilliant in its understanding of the digital economy. We can call it the Vegeta-Goku strategy, based on the anime Dragon Ball Z. Let's break that down for anyone who isn't a social media marketer.
TikTok is Vegeta. It's loud, aggressive, and has a massive viral algorithm designed to show your content to millions of strangers for free. But TikTok pays creators pennies. It's an awareness funnel.
OnlyFans, on the other hand, is Goku. OnlyFans has no internal discovery mechanism. You can't just scroll and stumble upon a new creator easily. But it is where the actual money lives, from paying subscribers.
Right, so you can't just be on one. You need both. TikTok is the publicity machine, the billboard on the highway. OnlyFans is the VIP club where you actually buy the drinks.
Margo proposes a Fusion Hawk collaboration where she will engineer the viral TikToks if Rose and Casey provide their larger audience base to launch it into the algorithm.
Rose and Casey agree. They go to Fry's Electronics late at night with Jinx and Susie to buy GoPros and a Roomba.
And this leads to the climax of Margo's creative success. Rigoberto, the Roomba. They script a series of TikTok videos where Margo plays this alien-like, incredibly naive character who believes the automatic vacuum cleaner is a sentient friend named Rigoberto.
The videos are bizarre, hilarious, and they go massively viral. But the piece de resistance is the video Margo posts explicitly behind the paywall on her OnlyFans.
The narrative of that specific video is quite elaborate and shows how well she understood Jinx's lessons on creating a storyline. Margo uses an AI voice generator to give Rigoberto a female, Siri-like voice.
In the video, Rigoberto hypnotizes Margo. The Roomba takes control of her body and commands her to do increasingly sexual acts, culminating in Margo masturbating to the vacuum cleaner's exact robotic instructions.
It is absurd, it is highly creative, and the audience absolutely loses their minds over it.
And the financial result is staggering. Within an hour of posting the Rigoberto video, Margo makes $12,000.
$12,000. In an hour. She is sitting there refreshing her screen, unable to process the numbers. She went from staring down a $4,000 eviction notice to making a down payment on a house in 60 minutes.
It is a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. She hacked the system.
But as with all dramatic narratives, that digital triumph is incredibly short-lived because the offline world crashes back in with a vengeance. And just when she thinks she has the financial part figured out, the real world completely shatters this digital bubble she's built. Mark finds out.
Which brings us to the custody battle, the ultimate clash between societal morality and actual reality.
How does Mark even find out? Because the internet isn't an island. Cheyenne's new fiancé, a youth pastor named Kenny, stumbles across Margo's viral videos.
Cheyenne is utterly mortified. She tells Margo she will never forgive her and calls her own daughter a whore.
And of course, Kenny's discovery inevitably filters back to Mark. So on Christmas Eve, because Mark is just that much of a villain, a courier with a diamond earring shows up at Margo's door to deliver legal papers. Mark is suing for full physical and legal custody of Bodhi.
His primary claim: that Margo is an unfit mother because she's doing porno.
Mark is basically weaponizing respectability politics.
This raises an important question. How does society actually measure the fitness of a mother? What are the metrics we use? We see this clash play out perfectly in the mediation scene.
They are in a room with a mediator named Nadia, who is described as wearing these eccentric silver fairy earrings.
Mark's entire argument is heavily reliant on leveraging societal stigma. He argues that Margo is a poor, uneducated 20-year-old living in a chaotic college dorm environment. He emphasizes that she lives with an ex-addict professional wrestler.
He argues that she is creating a dangerous, hyper-sexualized environment that will eventually ruin the child's future when his peers inevitably find out his mother is an internet sex worker.
His argument is rooted entirely in hypothetical future harms and moral posturing. He has no evidence of current neglect.
Margo's reality, which she fiercely presents to the mediator, is starkly different from his painting of it. She provides full-time, round-the-clock care for Bodhi. She is still breastfeeding him.
She has a loving, if highly unconventional, support system in her home with Jinx and Susie, and crucially, her financials are rock solid.
She doesn't just argue, she brings receipts. She brings her bank statements and her quarterly tax filings to the mediation. She proves that she is financially secure and capable of providing for the child because of her highly lucrative job on OnlyFans, not in spite of it.
And the hypocrisy of Mark in this mediation scene is enough to make your blood boil. Mark claims to be deeply, profoundly concerned about Bodhi's welfare.
Yet during the mediation, it's revealed that he is simultaneously divorcing his wife and battling for custody of his other 2 children. He is blowing up 2 families at once.
And when the mediator, Nadia, asks Mark who will actually watch Bodhi during the day while Mark is at the university teaching his classes, Mark blithely suggests he will just hire a nanny.
He wants to take a breastfeeding infant away from a mother who is home all day providing direct care, just to hand the child over to a hired stranger, all to satisfy his own ego and control.
Thank goodness the mediator sees right through this. She points out to Mark that Margo is the child's mother, not a daycare drop-off center he can just use when it's convenient.
But despite Margo holding her own in that room, the psychological toll this takes on her is immense. She is absolutely terrified of that word, unfit. It haunts her.
The text dives deep into her internal dialogue and her fear of societal judgment. She knows how the world sees her. She is a very young mother without a wedding ring, a woman who sells images of her body to survive.
She internalizes the judgment of Pastor Jim from Kenny's church, the harsh judgment of her own mother, and the disgust radiating from Mark. She genuinely wonders if they are right. She wonders if she is secretly rotten inside, if her moral compass is so entirely broken that she can't even recognize her own depravity.
It's the ultimate gaslighting. Society tells her that because she secured her survival through unconventional, stigmatized means, she is inherently bad.
And right when she needs stability the most, right when she is fighting for her child's life in court, the floor falls out from under her in her own home. Jinx relapses.
This is one of the most heartbreaking sequences in the entire story. Jinx has been secretly using heroin.
Margo realizes that the muscle relaxers she thought he was taking for his bad back have been missing. She starts noticing the signs. She finds him nodding off in the bathroom.
And then she discovers his stash. She finds a needle resting on the edge of the tub. She takes apart the hollow metal towel bar in the bathroom and finds 3 more needles and a baggie of brown paste hidden inside.
The emotional confrontation between them is deeply moving, mostly because it avoids all the typical cliches of an intervention scene.
Margo flushes the paste and hides the needles. She realizes that Jinx has been stealing her leftover pain meds from her laborer, and when those ran out, he started buying off the street.
When she finally confronts him, Jinx is surprisingly brutally honest. He doesn't demonize the drug or make grand, sweeping excuses. He tells her it doesn't turn you evil, it's just a chemical hook.
But he admits his profound failure as a human being. He tells Margo, "The tragedy isn't brown paste you buy from some guy in a Lexus outside a donut shop. The tragedy is that I was a shitty dad."
He acknowledges the reality that he missed his older children's lives, that he was always just reflecting the surface of things, addicted to the applause of the wrestling crowd rather than doing the quiet, unglamorous work of parenting.
The contrast the author sets up here is brilliant. If you look at the two father figures in Margo's life right now, Mark and Jinx, the irony is so thick.
Margo's lawyer, a guy named Ward, deposes Mark and finds out that while Mark is an awful, manipulative husband, he is actually considered a pretty great dad to his older kids. He goes to their soccer games, he's involved.
Jinx, on the other hand, freely admits he was a terrible dad to his older kids. But look at the present moment. Look at who is actually showing up.
Mark is weaponizing the family court system to terrorize Margo and potentially traumatize his own infant son just to win. Meanwhile, Jinx is the one standing on the sidewalk, holding Bodhi, looking at him like a somber little owl, giving Margo unconditional love and support when she is at her lowest.
Margo realizes she needs Jinx, as flawed and broken as he is. This profound contrast between clinical, societal judgment and messy lived reality comes to a head during the CPS visit.
Mark's legal maneuvering triggers an in-home observation by a social worker, Dr. Sharp. Margo makes a highly risky but conscious decision not to hide her reality from the state.
She tells Dr. Sharp straight up about Jinx's addiction. She explains that he is on a methadone treatment program, and crucially, she explains that Jinx is voluntarily moving out of the apartment to ensure he stays compliant with his recovery protocol and doesn't endanger Bodhi.
During this tense observation, Margo feeds Bodhi his lunch. She feeds him mashed yams and bananas. The baby is covered in orange goo, happily mashing the food into his own mouth with his tiny hands.
It is a messy, sticky, visceral, profoundly loving scene of normal motherhood.
And then we get the gut punch. The text actually lets us read Dr. Sharp's clinical report at the end of the chapter. It is written in this incredibly cold, sterile, bureaucratic language.
It diagnoses Margo with a moderately impaired self-concept and a potential for addiction. It starkly outlines the statistical risks of sex work listing depression, suicidal ideation, trauma. It reduces Margo to a series of risk factors on a clipboard.
Yet, despite all this clinical detachment and prejudice, the report ultimately concludes that Margo displays absolutely none of these negative behaviors. It states that she is a capable mother providing a warm, appropriate environment for her child.
The messy reality of Margo's love, the mashed yams, trumps the statistical risks on paper.
While Margo is fighting these intense legal and familial battles in the physical world, she's simultaneously navigating a deeply complex parasocial relationship online. Enter a character known as JB or JBM.
JB is a fan on her OnlyFans who pays Margo $100 per email. But he doesn't want explicit photos in these emails. He just wants to ask her questions about her life.
He asks about her middle school friends, her favorite foods, what her parents are like, and Margo responds by mixing truth with fiction. She uses the lies, as the text puts it, like paint, to try to tell him something real about her underlying emotional state.
It's such an interesting look at loneliness. The relationship becomes incredibly intimate, but in a very modern, disconnected way.
JB shares details about his own life, his job working in machine learning, his move to DC, his complex relationship with his mother. Margo finds herself actually caring about him. She starts waiting for his messages late at night.
But when the custody battle heats up and CPS gets involved, Margo reaches a breaking point. The pressure is too much. She realizes that to definitively protect Bodhi from Mark and the ruthless court system, she might have to quit OnlyFans entirely.
She has to become respectable. She starts looking into how to become a real estate agent, facing the terrifying, soul-crushing prospect of conforming to societal standards just to appease a judge.
She calls JB, using actual minutes on a phone, and tells him she has to stop talking to him. She confesses that she has a baby and is in the middle of a vicious custody battle. JB is completely shocked by the reality of her life and hangs up on her.
It seems like the definitive end of her online empire. She is willing to sacrifice her hard-won financial freedom and her creative success entirely for her child's safety. It's the ultimate maternal sacrifice.
But Margo doesn't quit. And the resolution of this subplot is fascinating because it merges her two worlds. JB doesn't just disappear into the internet ether. He uses his tech skills and tracks her down in real life.
He shows up in person, and in this incredibly touching gesture, he brings her $20 in quarters so she can buy Runts candy from a vending machine, which was a highly specific throwaway detail she had shared with him in one of their emails.
I loved that detail. It showed he was actually listening to the human being, not just consuming the creator. And JB isn't there to be a creepy stalker. He's there with a massive business proposition.
He recognizes Margot's absolute genius for marketing, audience engagement, and wrestling psychology. He points out that he has the high-level technical skills in machine learning and data security. So they decide to team up.
They create an agency to manage and protect other sex workers. They combine Margot's deep understanding of narrative building, the heels, the faces, the promos, with JB's technical ability to provide VPN security, algorithm optimization, and protection from doxing. Doxing's when malicious users try to uncover and publish a creator's real identity and address.
They become, as Margot enthusiastically puts it, the most awesome, ethical, kick-ass pimps of all time. Margot entirely embraces her role. She quotes the famous wrestler Ric Flair, realizing a profound truth about her journey and the nature of the world she lives in.
She realizes that money isn't just a corrupting force the way Disney movies or morality tales try to tell us. In the real world, money is power.
It is the literal power to hire a lawyer to fight Mark. It is the power to control her own time so she can raise Bodhi. It is the power to protect her child and the power to dictate her own terms in a world that tried from day one to silence her and push her to the margins.
She stops running from who she is, stops trying to appease the mediators and the professors, and builds an empire entirely on her own terms.
She really does.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the story forces us, as readers, to fundamentally reevaluate our metrics for what makes a good parent or a good person. Societal moralizing often completely ignores the brutal economic realities of survival.
Look at the dichotomy. Mark, a respected, tenured university professor, is morally bankrupt, manipulative, and happily weaponizes his wealth and status to abuse his power over a teenager.
Margo, an uneducated 19-year-old OnlyFans creator, provides unconditional love, financial stability, and fierce, unwavering protection for her child. The text asks us to strip away the glossy aesthetics of respectability and look at the actual gritty mechanics of care and survival.
And I want to ask you, the listener, to think about that in your own life today. Where do you apply rigid moral judgments? Who do you look at on the street or online and immediately categorize as unfit or inappropriate based entirely on their job or their circumstances?
And do those snap judgments actually hold up against the messy, complicated, often brutal reality of what it takes to survive and protect the people you love?
It's so incredibly easy to judge from the outside, from the comfort of a secure life. But when you are the one carrying a baby up a flight of stairs to an apartment you literally cannot afford, the world looks very, very different.
It does. And I will leave you with a final, perhaps provocative thought that builds on the underlying mechanics of this source text. Consider the profound parallel between Rufi Thorpe, the author writing this novel, and Margo, the OnlyFans creator within the novel.
Both of these women are in the business of constructing elaborate, fictionalized personas and narratives.
Exactly. They are both selling a carefully curated illusion, whether it's a 300-page book or a 60-second TikTok video, in order to evoke genuine, visceral emotions in their audience. Whether it is high literature analyzed in a stuffy college classroom or an internet persona interacting with a sentient Roomba, aren't they both just using the fakeness of a story to connect with the deep, lonely reality of the human experience? It suggests that all art, whether society deems it highbrow or lowbrow, relies on the exact same psychological architecture to make us feel less alone.
Wow. That is definitely something to mull over, using fakeness to find the truth. I love that. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Margo's Got Money Troubles. We hope you found it as wild, hilarious, and thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep questioning the narratives you're handed. Take care, everyone.